Welcome to the new episode of the Citizen Effect podcast. I think we're up to number 14 now. As always, my name is Keith Whiddon, 100% of Whiddon Criminal Defense in Louisiana, and 50% of Erase My Arrest, the expungement law firm. We represent people who have expungement cases in Louisiana as well as surrounding states. We are not joined by Devin today, unfortunately. He is having to hold down the fort, if you will, at his bankruptcy office, E. Orem Young in Monroe, Louisiana. But we are lucky enough to be joined by Mark today. Mark, let the listeners know who you are, where you are, what you do, and where they can find you on the web and social.
Sure. So my name is Mark Montanaro. I'm the founding managing attorney of Montanaro Law here in Long Island, New York, suburb of New York City. And you can find me pretty much everywhere at Montanaro Law, both on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere, social media. And essentially, I have a criminal law firm that also handles a variety of other multifaceted cases. A lot of my clients come out of either a criminal case or traffic case, and then I wind up doing the transactional work for their homes, the transactional work for their business, and so on. I have a interesting background that maybe we'll share today, and my approach to how I got into law, and to give you, I guess, a better understanding of what I do.
Yeah. Well, my first thing is I love New York City. And what is a day in the life? Because, I can watch the travel vloggers, or I can watch Casey Neistat's vlogs on YouTube. Mm-hmm. What is a day in the life for a Long Island and New York City attorney?
I think just like any other metropolitan city, it's busy. It takes us time to get to court. We're dealing with all the traffic and all the BS to get there. We're sipping on our coffee to keep us awake, so that when we get to court, we're not falling asleep. But reality is that we're all focused. I think that's one of the things, especially in New Yorkers, get a little bit bad rap, because when you see, or when you come here and everyone's so focused, people disregard us as being arrogant, rude, and wanting to spend no time on answering a question or whatever it may be. But because we have such a huge commute, such a huge, I guess, the angst to get to our daily work, that we wind up having a laser beam focus of, we got to get there, get out of my way, you're holding me up. So yeah, it's like no different than any other metropolitan city. It has a one great thing, though. You can find anything that you want here in New York, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whatever. Mm-hmm. You name the brand, you name the whatever you want, we've got it.
So I really, really identify with the, I'm focused on making this happen at this time. Yeah. It's really part of my personality, I think, where I know that I operate this way, or I operate best this way. My morning time is strictly for me to be in court. And if you want to talk about your case, if you want to, talk about making a payment, if you want to talk about this or the other, that's the wrong time for it. I'm there to get you in and out of the courtroom, or I'm there to get you in the courtroom and get your hearing started, held, get a ruling, something along those lines. I'm there to be the lawyer. And then in the afternoons, if you want to talk about your case, if you want to talk about the specifics, if you want to talk about what's next, that's when we got to do it. And so people want to call it arrogant. People want to call it whatever it is. I don't really care, because I feel the exact same way down here in rural Louisiana. So,
well, it may be that you're the exception down there and not the rule like it is up here, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that is the way to handle your day. I'm in court almost every day, and it's the same thing. Even when I'm in the car ride, although I try to maximize my time, efficiency, and such like that, make a phone call to a client when necessary, I sometimes still don't want to be distracted. I'm listening to my tune that's getting me jiving to, go in front of that court. I'm literally sitting there playing out what I'm going to say to the judge if the prosecutor says this, says that. If they pull some, shenanigans, I already have a rebuttal for it. One, I'm sure you can understand this, Keith. You and I probably, other people would think we're crazy because you might see us talking to ourselves, mimicking whatever. I'm sure you do the same thing. But that's what makes us prepared and makes us great attorneys.
It's funny that you mentioned the car ride. One of the best settings that I found in my phone was the do not disturb that automatically comes on whenever I'm driving.
Yep.
I mean, my friends and significant other, they hate it because, they try to call, they send a text message, whatever, and they get either, if they get the call, it just goes straight to voicemail, which my voicemail isn't even set up. And if you and if you send a text message to me, then it automatically sends back, I'm driving, I'll see your message whenever I get where I'm going. And so that's the best thing that I found in my iPhone in the settings department in the last year, probably. So, because I'm like you, I'm either listening to some old Grateful Dead concert or a really good audiobook. So, and regardless of which one it is, I don't really want to be disturbed.
No, agreed. Sometimes for me, I'm listening to everything from gangster rap to Shania Twain. It's just whatever I'm going to groove to that day that's going to make me more productive, make me feel like I'm on my game. I agree.
Exactly. So what is it in... You mentioned how you have this multifaceted law firm where it starts out as if, can we call criminal law the fountainhead?
Sure.
And then you become sort of their attorney for life. Is that a good way of saying?
100%,
so if that's the case, because we go to these coaching groups, and even in advertising, we see advertising for these lawyers that are, I am the car wreck lawyer, or I am the DWI lawyer, or I am the federal, I'm the federal fentanyl lawyer. What is it about you that says that, okay, criminal law is where I get my cases and what I know I'm good at, but I found a way to service my clients beyond their criminal case, or even beyond ways, because, we can do expungements and get things off their record after the criminal case is over with. But then, if they're like, oh, I have a car wreck, oh, I need a will, it's, well, maybe I need to put them in contact with this person or that person. What is it about you that said that, no, I'm going to find a way to treat this client or serve this client in-house?
So when I started my firm, I'm a little bit different than most people. Most people, when they go to, open up their firm, they've already worked in a law firm, and they get to a point where they're just disgruntled and they want to go out on their own, whether it's to make more money, whether it's to have more time, flexibility, or just be the decision maker. And they generally take a book of business that either that book of business is, doing 18B cases, or you have a steady flow of the criminal cases in this regard, or you have civil cases that you're handling and you're bringing over clients. So for me, I actually started my firm with no clients. I just moved into a new area of Long Island. I had just recently gotten married at the time. And I literally said, if I build it, they will come. And if they don't come, I'll go get a job. Right. So for me, I wanted to be the neighborhood lawyer, handle all different types of cases. But I knew that criminal and traffic tickets were going to be the way in, because it's something that in my area, a lot of people have a need for that. And I wasn't focusing on the typical criminal person, just as a bad dude and just always gets into trouble. Although obviously I have those clients too. I was focusing on the neighborhood father, the neighborhood, guy that just everyday Joe. And he got jammed up, but he also owns a business. He also owns his home, or he wants to own a home if he doesn't have one already. He's aspiring. He's living the American dream, or she. And they're going to need other things. So my background, although I'm heavily trained in criminal and I've been doing it for many years, I actually have a lot of background in real estate, a lot of background also in the construction industry, because my family was in that. And I worked in-house counsel for A&E Networks And Lifetime Network. So I've already been in-house. I've done entertainment law. So I can literally draft a contract from a blank page.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the yin and yang, as I call it, which is the criminal, get me into court, defend the rights, the constitutional rights of my client. And then I've got the other side of it, which is the transactional, which I can negotiate and wiggle myself through any type of deal or draft any type of contract as needed. So I literally am the multifaceted neighborhood lawyer. But it's interesting because if you throw yourself out there in this world, I can do everything, jack of all
Mm-hmm.
trades. What follows that?
Master of none.
Right. So because of that, you can't say that. You have to lead with something. And then once you get the client in on either a low ticket item like a traffic ticket or their criminal case where you literally save them from having a criminal record,
Mm-hmm.
then they trust you. And then they say, what else do you do, Mark? It's the question I get every day. What else do you do? Do you do real estate? Sometimes they have it in mind. Do you do real estate? Do you do employment? And then the answer is yes. So then it gets into a leading conversation of what else do you do? I act as general counsel for some businesses. Really? Oh my God, I own a trucking company. Great. Let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has there ever been the temptation, whether you get the really big win in criminal court, or maybe you sign the really big entertainment contract or a really big deal with an entertainer? Has there ever been that temptation when that happens to be like, okay, I'm going all chips all in on one or the other, and I'm just going to kill off this other?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's been the part that said, I'm not going to kill it off? I'm going to keep going down these, I'm going to keep being a full service firm, if you will.
I think it's because of my background. We all bring a lot of personal baggage, I'll put it in quotes,
Mm-hmm.
To our life and to our occupation. So we're all products of our parents. My dad's 86, so he's a post-war baby, post World War I baby, born right before World War II. Saw a lot of the Depression, saw what the Depression did to his parents,
Mm-hmm.
and the fears that your parents instill in you.
Mm-hmm.
You carry that on and through. And it is part of being an attorney. What's the one thing that we always try to protect our clients from? We protect our clients from the what if, right?
Mm-hmm.
The negative. This could happen to you. And because I have that so much ingrained in my background, my fear is that everything is a cycle. Like right now, we're going through higher interest rates. We were living through a world of like the wild, wild west, low interest rates. People are buying real estate, flipping, whatever. And now we're going into a realm of maybe things slowing up. We might see a recession, depression.
Yeah.
We don't know. And I think with that cycle, and I've been around a little longer than some, to have seen it go around already, that bankruptcy, for instance, it
Mm-hmm.
sucked the past few years, but now it's starting to pick up.
Yeah.
Right? So I think when you have a multifaceted, a disciplined law firm, you can kind of ride out the cycles, and you don't have to worry about doubling down on one thing, and it's great while it's great, and then you're sucking wind when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily right. It's just, I guess it's what's right for me,
Well, no, and it's funny that you lead into that story specifically about bankruptcy and how in the last few years it was really tough. If Devin were here, he would probably tell you the story about how shortly after COVID hit and bankruptcies were in the tank, but divorces were up.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started taking divorces left and right. And I think that Devin would tell you that he was basically the guy handling those divorces in that 3-4 attorney bankruptcy firm. And that's what got him through. And now in doing it for 2.5 years, he made a name for himself in doing divorces. And that's great for him because he's bringing revenue into his bankruptcy firm that is independent of the bankruptcy clients and the bankruptcy advertising that existed long before he became a partner at that firm. But he has also said that, man, I don't want to have to go to court every day. And so he is figuring ways to now dial back down the divorce work by only taking divorce work in certain places and things like that. But he's like, man, I don't want to give it all up because I have such a good reputation. I get so many referrals. And in our particular market, there is a small vacuum. There are a handful of people that are big names and even big advertisers in a roundabout sort of way. And then there are the people who get business by word of mouth. And he's just lucky enough to be getting business by word of mouth and also through their aggressive bankruptcy advertising as well. So,
right. So, I mean, I think that kind of answers the question too of, I guess, the fear is that, you're in one area and then you either have to be able to pivot to a new area that you may not have done before.
Exactly.
Or my way of pitching it is sort of like we do a lot of other things. So that way we're ready. We're already ready and already trained and out there. So that way, when real estate picks up again, we're your real estate attorney as well. When that dials down because of, interest rates or whatever economy, we can also do something else. Yeah. So it's like almost an insurance policy for your law firm.
That's what I was thinking. And that's sort of what we have in the expungement side of things that's the insurance policy that we have. And thankfully it's connected with criminal where I still feel comfortable in that world. I'll be the first one to tell you that when it comes to the civil world or comes to, writing contracts, it's not my thing. I do not feel comfortable in that space. So, but if you put me in a criminal courtroom and you give me an officer on the stand and you give me a police report, then hey, we can be there half a day if you want to. So, right. That's fun for me.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Absolutely.
all the other civil guys in town, I mean, they're they can't. They can. Yeah, they're like, I don't think I even have a criminal code book. That's from the year 2000. So or from the new millennium. So I'm definitely not going to criminal court.
It's actually the biggest compliment when you hear that from a colleague because I have a med mal and personal injury attorney friend of mine, a very good dear friend of mine, and he couldn't even step in and do a simple arraignment in criminal court. He'd be the lowest level misdemeanor. He probably couldn't even handle a traffic ticket. Now, of course, he could.
Right.
He's not. He's so fearful of even approaching something like that just because it's out of his sweet spot. So I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Agreed.
But I guess I guess it's also another thing that I really like about criminal court is that there are so many other people that just don't want to enter this realm. Yeah. So for whatever reason, they are intimidated by it and they don't want any part of it. And it's just whenever I hear it, I'm kind of like, well, the feeling's mutual because I do not want any part of your world. So it's not that I'm afraid of it. I had a taste. I didn't like it. It's not for me. And I'm much better over here. I'm serving people in my community a lot better in this world as opposed to trying to serve people in my community in the civil world. So,
and you mentioned some good words there. You're serving people, and I think a lot of people when they look at attorneys with a very very wide brush, they don't see it as service. They see it as, oh, you're helping. For us, you're helping bad guys get off. No, it's not really the case always. Sometimes that ends up being the result, but at the end of the day, not only do they have the constitutional rights, I'm not going to bore you with all of that because I know I'm preaching to the choir, but literally we are doing exactly that for a client, which is they're scared of the process. They're scared to enter that courtroom. They are fearful of what they're up against because either they are a normal everyday citizen who just needs guidance through the process to make sure that they're defended properly, or maybe it's because they're not from this country, and in their country, anybody with a gun, which could even be simply a court officer, is going to potentially hurt them. Yep. So they're fearful to walk into the building, and we take away all of those fears and we put them at ease through the process.
You touched on something and this is something that I personally struggle with. Whenever I have that client, and this is going to be very specific for, a lot of my clients, as well as a lot of your clients, because like you said, you seek to serve really just the average Joe that found himself in a jam, whether it be because it's a DWI or whether it's because, Yeah, I don't know. They gave their neighbor their Adderall, because they asked nicely for it. I don't know. They didn't have evil intentions, and they weren't trying to be a drug dealer, or they weren't trying to be a Mothers Against Drunk Driving poster child. Yep. That's their first time, and probably the only time in their life that they're going to go through the criminal system. Whenever it's just your neighborhood guy that got in a jam. Guys like you and I, like you said, you're in court every day. I'm in court every day, except for Fridays, and that is, and even those aren't immune. I can still still go to court on Friday sometimes.
Same here.
And sometimes it's not uncommon for me to be in 2 or 3 different courthouses in the same morning.
Yep.
And so it's just old hat for me to walk in there, but the clients are just, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to think. How do you handle or comfort or put in perspective for your clients that are going through this and that are just freaked out by the situation?
Well, I think it calms them down when they speak to my staff, and the staff explains my experience and let them know that you're not alone. This happens all the time. Because I think a lot of people believe that, this happened to them. Oh my God, I must be an evil person. At least it's going in the back of their mind if it's not front center and everything. And you just got to remind them, look, we do this all the time. And if for any reason we might be nonchalant or may seem like as if it's no big deal, it's not because we don't care, but it's because we see this all the time and we're not worried. So if we're not worried, you shouldn't be either. And that's generally the consensus of how I handle it. But I also, I think more than most, literally bring them through the entire process. And I feel like I repeat myself every day, the same stuff. But essentially it does help. Letting them listen, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to speak to the prosecutor. You're going to see me talk about things, right? You're going to hear me. You might even hear me say some stuff, right? Don't worry what I'm saying, right? And I'm trying to get you a plea. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is if we accept the plea, you're going to stand up there. The judge is going to ask you to raise your right hand. He's going to ask you to, he's going to swear you in, right? He's going to ask you, are you knowingly, intelligently entering into this plea? Has anyone coerced you in any way? Prepare them for the language that they're going to hear. I don't necessarily recite it exactly because you don't know how that particular judge necessarily is going to say it. But when they go through it, they're like, he said everything you said he was going to say. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. And it was easy, right? It wasn't hard. Yeah. And because of the preparation, I think that's key. I see a lot of attorneys. It's scary in our practice. I'm sure you do too, Keith, is that, they just go in, leave their client like totally in the dark. Don't worry. I got it. Mm-hmm. And then the client still, when he's taking a plea, is sitting there like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I've literally seen it happen once where a judge says, have you spoken to your attorney? And the client says, no. And, you would expect an admonishment to the attorney because that's, you're supposed to speak to your client, tell them everything.
Right.
And it was just sort of like, all right, can you have a moment and talk to your client and tell them what it was like so nonchalant. And then, you know what, here's a moment a judge had to kind of reprimand, not in a bad way, but just sort of like rectify this so it never happens again. And what happened? Just smoothed it over, and it didn't change that lawyer. Didn't make things better.
No. You really hit on something that I feel like I've uncovered in the last 3 or 6 months. And it is that clients want to be educated on the process, because it seems like they come to me and it's like, this guy was my lawyer and they said I should take this plea, but I don't know why. It might be a good plea, but I don't know. They just said it is. But I haven't seen this and I haven't seen that. And I feel like I would like to see those things. And so what I have done as much as I can is whenever I have a client that just even has these indications, I go ahead and I say, okay, this is the type of case you have. And in a case like this, you have these kind of options. For a DWI, look, you were pulled over and you did field sobriety and you did the intoxilizer. Okay. look, is that a perfect factual scenario? If you ask me, no. Okay. I don't like that you blew the intoxilizer. I don't like that you did field sobriety. But guess what? I've been trained by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in their SFST school. I actually have that same certification that the officer has. And I know that the officer has to do these tests by the book. This agency, yeah, that's important. And most don't. This agency has body cams, dash cams, etc. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get that body cam and dash cam. And we're going to see what he did wrong in the field sobriety test. And if we have something to hang our hat on in there, then I'm going to file a motion to suppress. And I'm going to say, officer, did you follow your training? Did you do this? Well, did you do it here? Did you do it there? It's not how the book says to do it, is it? And I'm going to use the language that the officer uses. The officer uses the words arrest decision. Officer, did you make a good arrest decision here? And here's the thing. Client, if the judge thinks that it was a bad arrest decision, then that breath test that we don't like gets thrown out. And so now we've taken away a really big piece of the state's evidence, but we've also done something else. We've also discredited that officer if he testifies at trial.
That's right.
So we've taken away two really big pieces of their case. Now that's an option. But if that's not fruitful, we have these other options. And just by having that talk, sometimes they feel like they're drinking from a fire hose. But, if you do the whole Chris Voss, the late night FM DJ voice to kind of explain it, then, okay, I can work with that. It makes sense. Let's, I like the options and I like what you're telling me. So education and options is something that I think that you've alluded to and that I've found that clients and prospective clients are looking for these days, and that they just aren't necessarily seeing it in other places from other lawyers, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that it helps us who do that, especially to retain clients. And for me, it's more so even where I have other areas of practice that I'm trying to keep them as to be their attorney for. But it also we have to fight against those who don't do all of that, who take against the shortcuts. Mm-hmm. And then it comes down to fees too. The guy who's taking the shortcuts can also shortcut the fees, and now we're all going up against them. I know that it's certain types of cases, I'm sure for you as well as for me, there's a minimum. At the end of the day, I'm not going to take a case below a certain value for a particular type of case. And it's not about me being a pig. It's not being, I need to pay for my overhead. Those are on a business side of things. Of course, those are relevant, but it really just comes down to, if you really want me, who's going to do the right job and give you the right approach and give you every avenue to get out of this case, and let it be up to with good advice, let it be up to the client, but they can make an educated decision, you have to pay for that.
Absolutely. And, and the other part of that is also knowing your value. You have all these years experience in front of all of these judges, in front of all these courts, sure. And you have all of this specialized training in these fields, not to mention whenever it comes to your transactional work. I mean, working for A&E and Lifetime Network, I mean, who can say that they've been a lawyer on the entertainment side of things? I mean, that just speaks hugely to the Justin Bieber's and he's the first one that comes to mind because he got arrested for, going 150 in his Lamborghini in Florida. So it's just what comes to mind though, whenever you have someone who is in an entertainment space that may need services on the entertainment side of things, or is in the entertainment space and needs services on the criminal side of things. So.
No, agreed. And it's always nice when you do represent someone who's high profile, and then you wind up, you go to court. I remember this one instance, I was representing a major sports personality, and he had 26, if I recall correctly, 26 points. So I don't know how it is down in Louisiana, but here in New York, you lose your license at 11. Mm-hmm. And in one traffic stop, he had 26 points. Mm-hmm. So he was facing, obviously losing his license for a very long time, insurance rates going up, potentially not being able to drive. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get it down to 2. And literally I'm speaking with the prosecutor and the judge and getting this deal. And they said, is this the so and so? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, actually is. And I think they were enamored by that. Like, wow. I mean, the case was already negotiated without knowing it, so it wasn't their notoriety. They got him off in any way. It was. I like to think it was also my skill, but at the
Exactly.
same time, is it's always great when you're able to do that. But I take the same approach, and believe it or not, it didn't cost more money just because the guy had more money. Same approach for every client.
Mm-hmm.
That if I get a deal from a criminal prosecutor that is just okay, my client might be willing to take it. And sometimes, and a lot of times, my fee structure is flat fee. So there's no enhancement for me to have another court appearance. It actually behooves me to say, sure, let's take it and roll on to the next case.
Yes.
But there are days I was like, I'm not taking it. We're coming back. Yep. And then even when the client's inclined to take it, they're not demanding it, but they're inclined because it sounds like it's a fair offer. And I said, you know what? You're right. It is a fair offer in every other case, but not in yours. I want something better. And then when you go back and you're able to get something better, they're like, wow, you're the real deal.
Yep.
And that's the pride that we have whenever we go to court and we're able to get that from our client. Hence the review, right?
Yes.
Google review, or just even the one that goes in your ear and makes you smile ear to ear.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And not to mention the fact that in my opinion, the Google review is the new referral as well. So
right.
So that review from that happy client who you may have this isn't the best way of saying it, but maybe under promised and over delivered is, I mean, that's huge. What kind of what are the changes, or not changes isn't the right word? What are the unique things that come up or may become an issue whenever you represent someone who is what you would call a high profile client because they are a professional athlete or they are in entertainment, things like that?
I think for me, it would probably, the number one thing would be anonymity. They already have the name. If it's not a very, very unique name, meaning if it's not a very ethnic name that can only be one person because they've only heard one person, in the world that has that name. If it's not that, like Justin Bieber, I would think would be a very unique name, believe it or not. But if it's not a unique name and it's it could be an average guy that just happens to have the same, I would say trying to keep that person's popularity anonymous, so that way they're not being judged on who they are. Because while you would think that a popular person, whether it be in the media, whether it be in sports or whatever it is, would that cachet, that the stardom factor would help a client, it actually sometimes hurts the client, right?
Oh yeah.
Judge would see, oh, multimillionaire, he's dating this model, that model, whatever. It could be jealousy, that's not cool. Who does, and then I'm gonna throw the book at him just because I can, and then I can tell all my buddies that I threw the book at so and so, right? It could also just again be the fines, the actual. It could drag out. Maybe they want to make the person, especially on the criminal side, they want to make the person make a physical appearance, not because it's necessary, because they want that stardom person in the courtroom. So I think the huge part of it is to keep that person anonymous, and for all those reasons. Because if it was just you or me, we would be anonymous. If we got a speeding ticket or if we got a misdemeanor, nobody knows us unless we're on the front page of Newsday every day.
Right. Let me ask you this, and this is not meant to be in any way incite any kind of political whatever. Sure. And as a disclaimer, this is not an endorsement nor a whatever the antonym to an endorsement is. This is neither an endorsement nor a critique of former President Donald Trump. But being that you are in, the New York City area, and we saw what happened whenever former President Trump was arraigned in New York City. Has there been any other time similar to that where a high profile person has been, although Trump elected to go to court on his own accord, they offered to arraign him over Zoom, and he wanted to come to court. Go figure. But that aside, has there been anything similar to that in your time as a lawyer that has the same kind of notoriety where everything has to stop for this person to come in and out of the courthouse?
I think because of the level of security necessary, I would say he's probably the top.
Okay.
But I could think of a lot of people. Bernie Madoff lived not too far away where I grew up. His actually one of his sons went to school with my sister, same high school I graduated from. We here on Long Island have a lot of notoriety for scandals. Back in the day, the Buttafuoco case, right? Amy Fisher, Dina Lohan, Lindsay Lohan, all of those. So we're not it's not a small town where we don't get to see this, but I would definitely say Donald Trump would be in the top because of the security necessity.
Yeah, and the Secret Service element too. So because that's a whole different level of craziness, for lack of a better term, that escapes me at the moment.
I think also, like, there's a difference between people showing up because they want to take a picture or they want to see this star coming in and out of court versus potentially someone maybe wants to take a cheap shot. When I say shot, I really mean shot at the person. So like with a president or someone who's very important, I think that's always a big threat, where you don't see it as much as being a threat for, like, if it's P. Diddy or if it's, an entertainer. It's more about the camera that is the shot.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that also, again, getting back to your question, leads to the complexity as a defense attorney. I mean, I think a defense attorney in a scenario like that would want to be, in some ways, especially if they're not that seasoned or they're not that well known, they want to seize on that opportunity to be front and center media, so they can say, hey, here I am, I represent so-and-so. But I think there's also you need to think about that. Is it really doing justice for your client? And I think that a lot of attorneys that are in that realm, they may choose to do it for their own selfish reasons. And the reason why they're not called out on it is because maybe their client can weather that storm, right? I'm just throwing out names, but like someone like Kim Kardashian or Kanye West, whatever it be, they're used to being in the spotlight, negative and positive. So if an attorney causes a little more negative spotlight for either one of them, they probably don't care, and no one's going to have any concern over it because they're used to that. But if you take somebody who's Lily White, and I can't think of anyone I would say Betty White, may she rest in peace. If I had a client like Betty White and she was arrested for something, I think that, the idea of putting my face and her face and going in front of cameras just for my self-advertisement would be wrong with the attorney.
I agree with you on that. Quick story to that point. I represented a client who was a victim of police brutality. He was actually charged out of that being a victim with resisting arrest and some other felony grade offenses that were all later dismissed whenever the attorney general got involved. But the body camera from the police brutality that was inflicted upon him by Jacob Brown, whenever that was released, we had phone calls going off the hook. Can we talk to the client? Can we talk to you? Will you give us a quote? Will you give us this? Will you give us that? And it was universally no. I won't. And there was also another lawyer who represented him specifically for the police brutality. Because again, I only do the criminal defense stuff. I don't want to be a part of a civil police brutality case. I want your case to be handled by someone who I believe is competent and confident and well-versed in that, so that lawyer can get you the best result in that field. And I'm going to get you the best result in this arena. That other lawyer chose the option of going on the air for everything, and she has since been relieved as counsel in that case, or withdrawn as counsel in the police brutality case, because maybe she was in over her head, so
or too much attention focused in the wrong direction,
or that too,
yeah,
possibly. So that's my little story time on that. Now, I can't let you get away from the podcast because you are, we've talked about life in New York City, or representing people who live in New York City. We've touched on celebrities and athletes, and we've also touched on the is organized crime, is that a fair word?
sure,
Or what?
unorganized crime.
Yeah, or unorganized. So, do you have a war story that you could share with the audience about, well, this is, kind of one of those New York things? Because immediately I'm thinking like, some kind of gangster mob that would be a storyline on The Sopranos sort of thing. So do you have anything like that you could share with the audience?
I mean, it's like as far as a client or experience as it is being an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. An experience as an attorney, or maybe a client that can remain nameless.
Sure.
Okay.
I had a case with someone who's a gang member, and basically, with respect to that case, I became more knowledgeable about the inner workings of this particular gang, and they're a well-known name, household name. And it's interesting because there's misconceptions that I think we all have as consumers of media, whether it be watching the news or even television, movies.
I'm thinking Gangland on the History Channel. I love that show.
Yeah, and it's great stuff, and a lot of it is legit. I mean, it's not to say discredit in any way, but what's interesting is when you get to actually represent or get to see a real life member of that organization, you're anticipating that first meet. I'm dealing with a roughneck, a guy who's forced to be reckoned with, whether it's a Tony Soprano type or whether it's a biker, or whether it's whatever type of gang we're talking about, and what you see in the movies. And you realize that they're just an everyday guy. He could be your next door neighbor. Best friend could be over your house every Sunday for dinner, bring over his kids. And unless you truly knew his affiliation with that organization, you would never think twice about them being the godfather of your children, having them over or whatever. And then not only that, but then when you also get to hear a little bit more about the organization, and wow, it's a lot different than they portray it on the news. But the one thing that I have to say in my experiences with that is, the one thing that is true is there is this level, no matter what organization we're talking about, there's this level of code of silence. There's a level of ethics that you almost don't even find in law. We're supposed to be the most ethical people out there, right?
Right.
And you don't
yet people trust prostitutes more than they trust lawyers. So
right, because they know they're not going to give away the names of their Johns, right? So I feel like as if what makes it interesting, and it's hard to say you can idolize, or hard to say like you would want to follow that model, because we're talking about criminal organizations here, so you don't want to think like that.
Right.
But there's this level of, again, sophistication, ethics, that if they were to able to turn that organization into something that is for good, entirely for good, because I want to believe also these organizations do some good, but for the most part they're also criminals. So if they could turn it around and be a true like a 501c3, they would blow every person out of the water, every organization out of the water with their level of, again, organization, hierarchy, ethics, loyalty. It's amazing.
Okay. All right. So I need to ask you, because you are, I believe you're our first guest from New York City on the podcast. And I can't let you off because I'm an avid traveler. I love to travel. Love New York City. Was just there in November. Oh, the weather was so perfect. Oh gosh, it's amazing. What are you, being a local? What are some of the places that, someone like me going to New York for, whether it be the third time or the fifth time or the first time, what is it that, like, hey, make sure you do this whenever you get to the city?
Okay, so if it's New York City, I would say skip the tourist attractions.
Mm-hmm.
They'll always be there for the most part, so you can always go back.
Mm-hmm.
I would say go in and live like a New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
The neighborhoods. So if you're not familiar already, New York City is not just, Manhattan. It has 5 boroughs,
Mm-hmm.
5 counties, 5 boroughs. And each of them have a unique flavor. And even within those particular boroughs, like Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and Staten Island, they all have neighborhoods. So I would say a great place to go see would be either, and this is Brooklyn, and it's very close to Manhattan, Dumbo, down on the Manhattan Bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also Williamsburg, right underneath the Williamsburg Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different perspectives. You got the higher income, lower income, all melded together. The food is amazing. It doesn't matter which restaurant you go to. For the most part, it's good. There's good drinks. There's good views of the bridges. Good views of the river. So definitely see the neighborhoods, and take in the off Broadway or the off Broadway performances. If you're not scared, go to the Apollo if you get a chance. It's a rough neighborhood, especially at night. I'm not gonna lie, but go with a car service,
Mm-hmm.
and with a friend that might know the area, but experience that, because what people don't understand about New York City is that we've got all the great things. Like I said earlier on, I said we've got everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes us true New Yorkers is those neighborhood restaurants, those neighborhood vibes, the people who are just everyday people.
Yes.
It's not exactly what you see on the Travel Channel.
No, and I'll tell you, whenever we were there in November, oh gosh, I wish I could. I think that we went to a brunch place. Oh God, Poco. I believe it was Poco on the Lower East Side.
Yep.
I think, and that was the best place ever. We went in and you had an hour and a half, and you had bottomless mimosas, and you had an entree, and my significant other and I are talking, and then there are people, literally right there beside us, and they're having a great time. And it's like, hey, where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Atlanta, but I moved up here because my boyfriend is in New Jersey. What do you do? And my significant other, she says, well, I'm actually his paralegal. I was his girlfriend first by 6 months, but I'm his paralegal, and he and that guy is like, oh my God, I can't get away from lawyers because I was a paralegal in Atlanta and I moved up here to be with my boyfriend. And it's just
right.
I love it. It's just one of those experiences that just stands out because it was not the tourist place. I don't think you're going to be able to pick up the travel guide book and be like, oh, you need to go eat brunch at this place in this little neighborhood. So
the best part of that experience you had is that some people would be writing this down. Oh, I got to go to Poco, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when that person travels to New York, Poco might not be there anymore, right?
Yeah.
Possible, right? Because it's a small little spot. But at the end of the day, it's okay, because the place that's down the block from there that does the exact same thing is just as good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's awesome about it here too. And again, like you had touched upon the people, right? New York is not just a melting pot. it's a melding pot.
Mm-hmm.
It's we literally we get together as strangers in the middle of whatever, whether it's the winter, the summer, it doesn't matter when you come here, and you could be sitting next to somebody you have no idea where they're from. Turns out they have a lot in common with you, and they're from the entire side of, different side of the country, different part of the world, and yet you're in the same place. It's almost like destiny brought you together for that moment, right?
Right. Or we went to a comedy club,
Yeah.
and there was someone who took the stage who was from Louisiana, just moved up to New York, moved from Louisiana. I'm like, how crazy is this that we come all the way to New York City and we hear a small, or not small, we hear an aspiring Louisiana comedian. So it's that's what it is. So look, we have been on for about 50 minutes, and I'm definitely going to be respectful of your time because we started late as well.
No worries.
I prepped you on this. What is your citizen effect? How are you going to leave these spaces that you're in? And it may be in the criminal defense space, and it may be in the entertainment and transactional real estate space, or it may be in something that we haven't even talked about. But what is going to be your citizen effect that your family, your clients, your friends are going to remember you for?
Well, Keith, I'd like to be remembered for giving people a fair shake. It's one of the reasons why I became a lawyer. I've seen my own adversity growing up. I didn't always feel like I belonged with the group of people I was with. Through my adult time period of college and beyond, I met a lot of people that I felt that had some sort of synergy with, because they didn't feel comfortable in whether it be the neighborhood they grew up in, or whether it be the circles that they're in because of profession or whatever it may be. And then as an attorney, as we talked a little bit before, how certain people are disenfranchised by the process, or they're scared and they just don't know how to handle the situation they got themselves in, and they're here in front of me looking for help. One of the main themes for me in everything that I do is to give another person, a stranger, the fair opportunity to be heard and to find their own true happiness. And whether that be in a criminal sense of getting them a second chance, whether that be an opportunity for a transaction that can better their life and give them wealth and success, or even just in the work that I do in mentoring others on how to be a better person and find your destiny. So I think we, as attorneys, we all kind of do that anyway in our conversations with our clients after the criminal case, after the transaction. We're like, hey, you really should do this, or you really should think about that. And it's that mentoring that to make sure that they not only set themselves and give themselves that opportunity and fair shake for themselves, but then when you're in a place, whether it be as a business owner, an employer, or just the average guy in your town, there's going to be someone else who's going to be like you were or you are now, that's going to need your help to give them a fair opportunity, and then just pay it forward. Yeah. That's essentially what I think. What I do every day is to pay it forward, because I feel like as if at times maybe people weren't paying it forward to me. And then when other people were, it's like I owe it to society to do the same.
I love that. I identify with that. One of my things that I enjoy doing is whenever I see a new young lawyer in the courtroom, I always want to pull them aside, introduce myself, and maybe volunteer some advice or whatever. Yeah. Ultimately, though, I just want to be the young lawyer for them that I would have wanted whenever I was in their shoes and, their first day or their first week in court. So
Agreed. I 100% agree with you. I think there's not enough of that in our profession, in the world. So I really believe that that's the right way to go. And some people in our profession take the opposite approach. Mm-hmm. They're like, I had it hard. Why should I make it any easier for you? Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong approach.
Right. Well, it's definitely the difference between a scarcity mindset and a prosperity mindset. That's the difference. So, well, we're about to the end. Mark, go ahead, and for the people that stuck around to the end, let them know one more time who you are, where they can find you on the web and social.
Sure. I'm Mark Montanaro, managing attorney at Montanaro Law, and you can find me at Montanaro Law, MONTANAROLAW, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever.
And I am Keith Whiddon. This has been the Citizen Effect Podcast. Mark, thank you so much. Looking forward to catching up with you in the future. I think this would be a great chance. Maybe in a year or so from now, we can have a follow-up interview and see what's changed.
Keith, that would be great. I thank you for having me. And certainly, if you're ever in the New York City area, let me know. I want to take you to some of those places you haven't been.
I will absolutely take you up on that. Don't worry about that one.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
You got it. Take care, man.